Today you are at session 1 of the MIT App Inventor station. MIT App Inventor is a tool created by a fancy college called MIT just for the purposes of teaching app development to young students. So today we're going to create an app on an Android tablet like the whack-a-mole game that you might have played at Chuck E. Cheese, where you try and hit the mole. So if I hit the mole, oops, I missed him.
You got me.
He's going to say you got me, and if I miss him, it's going to say haha. So we're going to use some text-to-speech, we're going to use a canvas and some animation, and that's how we're going to create this project. A little bit about the MIT App Developer tool. On the left, you're going to have a palette of things that you can add to your screen, and this is going to be your screen right here. Once you add things to your screen, you're going to see them in the list of components. When you select a component, you're going to see its properties. So for example, let's create our new project. I'm going to choose start a new project. I'm going to call it mole. Oh, I already have a project called mole. Call this mole 1. You can call it whatever you like. So I have a blank screen, and this is what your end user is going to see. This is a very common way for a development environment to behave, where you have a front layer and a back layer. And in this tool, it's no different. You have a designer view where you have a screen and you can put things on the screen like buttons and text boxes and pictures. And then a blocks view, which is kind of behind the scenes, and that's where you put your code, and that defines how the items that you've added to your screen, it defines their behavior. So they work together, but they're kind of two separate layers where you put your items. So for ours, we are going to start with something called a canvas. So I'm going to scroll down to drawing and animation, and I'm going to add a canvas to my screen. The canvas, if you think of it like a basketball court, it's the bounds that the basketball wants to stay in when you're playing basketball. So this is a little small. I want my game to kind of fill up the screen, so I'm going to change the properties of this canvas. So I see it in my components view, I have it selected, and I'm going to change its height to be 80% of its parent, which gives me a little bit of space to add a score later. And the width, I'm going to say fill the parent, and the parent is going to be the width of your phone or your tablet. Incidentally, I'm using the emulator here to show you this code. It's a free installation from the MIT App Inventor website. For Coding Club, you are going to have an Android tablet. This will work on any Android tablet or phone if you want to do this at home, or you can install the emulator. So this is my canvas where I'm going to add my mole. So I'm going to take an image sprite, and I'm going to drag it onto the canvas. You can put it anywhere you like. I'm going to rename this to mole. It's very important that you name things in an intuitive way, in a way that you can follow later so your code is easy to read. And I'm going to make his background be a picture. Under picture, it's going to ask me to upload a file. I am going to choose the mole picture. Those of you in Coding Club, your teacher will give you instructions on where to find this image. If you are at home, you can download a picture of a mole from the internet, preferably one that is copyright free, or a file that belongs to you, that you drew yourself, would be safe as well. So I'm going to change the height of this is my mole, to be 50 pixels. That way it game's a little bit challenging because he was way too big before that, too easy to whack. So now I've got my mole and I've got my canvas. I'm going to add two invisible components. I know I said earlier that the screen, that this front layer is the things that you see. These are kind of two exceptions to that rule. The first thing I'm going to add is a clock. I'll scroll down a little bit so you can see what happens. I'm going to drag the clock over here, and I'm going to drop it onto my screen, and it's going to disappear, and you're going to think you didn't add it, but you really did. It's down here under non-visible components. The next thing I'm going to add under media is my text-to-speech module, and I'm going to drag that here, and it's going to appear here in my non-visible components. This is the thing that when I give it some text, it's going to speak haha or you got me. And the clock is going to be, it's kind of a neat tool that allows me to execute code over and over on a time interval. So this clock is going to execute something every 1 second. The time interval here is in milliseconds, so 1,000 is 1 second, 2,000 is 2 seconds, and so forth. So I'm going to write some code that executes every 1 second. I'm going to rename this clock to mole timer. I'm going to leave the text-to-speech. That's a good enough name for me for now. So now I'm in my blocks view. I no longer see my screen. I see some blocks that I can select, and I'm going to drag them over here, and they're going to define the behavior for the screen that I just drew. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make my mole appear at random locations. And if you remember, we said we were going to that the timer, the purpose of the timer, the mole timer, was to execute something every second. We defined that on our front end. And now we're on our back end, we're going to say what happens when mole timer.timer means what are we doing every second. I call these like a taco. It looks kind of like a taco shell. Everything you put inside this taco is going to execute every second. So I'm going to make my mole appear in a random location. So I'm going to say call mole.move_to. And you refer to these by his x and y coordinates. His location x goes this way, y goes up and down, so it tells him where to go. I'm going to go under math. Just ignore those messages. It's telling you you're missing elements, and we just haven't put them in yet. I'm going to pick a random integer from 1 to 100. I'm going to duplicate this so I stop getting that message. Duplicate. So now I want him to go, he's already running, from 1 to 100. I'm going to make it a little wider. For those of you using this in our coding club with the Android tablets, your tablet is 500 pixels wide. Mine here is not quite that wide. So I'm going to make it 200 wide by 200. So essentially what this is doing is going to move him, his x and y coordinates, how far is he left and right, and how far is he up and down. It's going to surprise me. A random integer is a surprise number. Surprise me with a number between 1 and 200 for x and y coordinates. And you can see it's working well. He is just appearing wherever. If it looks like he's never appearing over on the right on your device, you can up this number. And there you go. Now he's filling up more of the screen. So now we've got our mole appearing. The next thing we have to do is define what happens when I click him. I'm going to click him with my mouse here, but when you're doing it with a tablet, obviously you're going to point with your finger and touch it. So I'm going to say on my mole, I'm going to sense when my mole gets touched. So I'm going to drag that over here, and now I'm going to put in the taco what happens when my mole gets touched. I'm going to say something. So I'm going to go to my text-to-speech item, and I'm going to say call text-to-speech.speak. It expects one little thing in here. I'm going to give it some text. I'm going to drag it in there from the text menu. And when I touch him, I'm going to have him say, "You got me." You can have him say whatever you like. We can try that. It should update pretty quickly. So if I click on him now,
"You got me,"
I can hear him say, "You got me." So that's working. The next thing I want to do is if I miss him, I want it to let me know that I missed him. So to do that, I'm going to say when I touch the canvas, I want to say something different. And one complicating thing about this is, first let me add this, when canvas.touched. If you think of this like a painting, if you were to touch a painting, you're touching both the paint and the canvas. And that's the way this operates too. So I'm going to, if I touch the canvas, it's going to execute also when I touch the mole, who is on the canvas. So I'm going to put a little logic in here under control. I'm going to say if I'm not touching any sprite, and that's under logic. I'm going to say if I am not, I'm going to hover over touched any sprite to get this little component. If I'm not touching any sprite, then I can assume I'm only touching the canvas. And in that case, I'm going to say you missed me. I'm going to right click on this and hit duplicate. and add that there, except if I miss, I'm going to say, haha. You can say, you missed me, or whatever you want to say. So now, if I click just the background, it says, haha, and if I am lucky enough to get the mole, it says, you got me. So this by itself is an excellent game. If you did this, you've done very well. But if you want to add a little bit more, you may want to add a score. So we left some room on our designer view. So let's go back to designer and add a user interface element so we can see the score. So first I'm going to go and add a label, and I'm going to drop it right here. That's where we left some room. The default text for the label is going to be text for label 1, which you're never going to want a label that says that. So I'm going to say the text for my label is score 0. So initially when the program starts, it's going to say score 0. I'm also going to give it a name. So I'm going to hit rename under components, and I'm going to say score label. So now I know how to refer to it. So I'm going to go back to blocks and define what is going to make that label tell me what the score is. The first thing I'm going to need is a variable. A variable, think of it like a bucket. It's a bucket where I can say, I have a bucket with a score inside of it. I can put something in the bucket, and anybody who wants to know what the score is can look in the bucket and see what the score is. So let's create a bucket or a variable called score. I'm going to set it initially under math to 0. So initialize, by the way, happens when a computer program starts running. So it starts setting up everything in your environment before it runs. So if I add this here, it's going to, when the program starts running, it's going to set the score to 0. Not because it's up here. I could put it down here. They don't execute in order. I just know this event happens first. So now I'm going to want to say, when the mole is touched, I'm going to want to increase the score by 1. So I'm going to go back to variables, and I'm going to say set global score to, and then I'm going to go into math because I need to add the score that I know with 1. So it's going to go get here. Get. And most of these components, they have a drop down. That means you can change them afterwards. Make some room here. I have to go to math to pick a number, and then I say 1. So it's going to set my score, but it's going to add 1 to the score every time I hit my mole. But this doesn't change my label. This just sets the score variable, which I'm still kind of behind the scenes. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say my score label now needs to have the correct value. So my score label dot text needs to have the score. So I'm going to go to variables. I've already set the score in this last line of code, so now all I have to do is get it. Actually, one more thing. I'm going to go ahead and change this to, oh, my emulator died. But you know what it looks like already because you saw it at the beginning. I'm going to actually join, and you're going to see this work when you finish your code, which is even more fun. I'm going to join the word score, colon, space, with the score. And what that's going to do is it's going to display score, colon, and then my score. So you have to believe me that this code really works. You'll have a handout to help you duplicate this code on your own laptop and run it on your Android tablet. If you're doing it at home, the handout for this is also right next to the video that where you found this. So I hope you've enjoyed this lesson. If you want to, if you have time left in the period and you want to do more to this, go ahead and decorate your screen, change its colors. You can actually change some of the values for the text-to-speech. This can go as high as 2. This, I don't know how high this can go. You can experiment with that, but you can make the text-to-speech talk faster, talk higher. You can make this a 0 or a 0.5, make him have the text-to-speech have a deeper voice. So you can play with that a little bit, change the colors, decorate the screen, make the score, make the game end if you have a score of 5, let's say. You have all you need. Everything I've shown you today should give you what you need to execute those challenges. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Go ahead and get started if you're in Coding Club. by writing this code on your laptop.